If you've been watching anime for some time, then one thing you may have noticed is that the female characters of this medium always fall into archetypes. You've got jealous characters, overprotective characters, or even characters who don't like to reveal their affection to the main character. Even though having these characters can be pretty interesting, it also means that the anime will lack originality when it comes to that aspect. But there have been shows that think out of the box and manage to give us actually interesting character arcs and also define some great female characters in the medium. For example, all the female characters in Black Lagoon had their own tragic past or an end goal which they wanted to achieve and didn't fall into the usual cliché anime tropes. But when it comes to strong and unique female characters, we can't forget the anime that does it really well, Attack on Titan. So in this video we're going to discuss how Attack on Titan creates strong and interesting female characters and how they're developed, and most of all, how they tie into the main themes of the story. We're going to talk about the main 3 female characters in the story so far: Mikasa Ackerman, Annie Leonhardt and Historia Reese. We're starting off with Mikasa, Eren's adopted sister and also the main female character of the series. Mikasa starts out as a one-dimensional character. She cares about Eren more than anyone else and is dependent on him. When they later join the Survey Corps, Mikasa becomes more and more protective around Eren, but every time, things turn out to keep them further apart. In the first arc, he's separated from her during the fight with the Titans. In the second arc, he's taken by the Levi squad and also gets captured by the female Titan later. In the third arc, Reiner captures him again, and in the fourth arc, Kenny's henchmen take both him and Historia hostage. In each of these times, Mikasa's end goal was to save Eren, which means she rarely got any character development in the series as long as she had Eren. But rather than her character development, there are many other factors that are impressive about the writing of her character. Mikasa's a born leader and manages to rally the troops after knowing about Eren's death. She's strong and can defend herself as well as her friends. In the very first episode, you can see how the other kids aren't afraid of Eren but run for their lives when they see Mikasa. Mikasa in the story represents family, which is a core theme of Attack on Titan. The theme of family and relationship repeats more often in Attack on Titan, such as the love of Grisha for his family, how Connie lost his mother, or the family relationship between Rod Reese and Historia. Mikasa's sole reason for living is family, which is just Eren. But Isayama doesn't let her get conquered by her weakness so easily. Remember how I said she doesn't get any character development as long as Eren's there? Well, in the 7th episode, after knowing Eren had died, Mikasa continues to fight and even decides to die fighting. This is where she showcased some development because she realized that life was worth living. Another important character of the story is Annie Leonhardt, aka the female Titan. The reason why her character is interesting is because we got to know about her burden as we progress through the story. In the last few episodes, we saw her as the antagonist, a mad serial killer with a mysterious background. But as we progressed through the narrative and learned about Annie, Berthold and Reiner, we slowly began to realize the burden thrown to her. So what makes her so strong? It's the way she's carried her burden, hid her secrets, blended in, and even kept her own pains for herself while hiding them from others. Berthold also depended on Reiner for life-threatening decisions, and Reiner on the other hand wasn't the best person in keeping secrets. But rather than both these male characters, Annie's character manages to do the job given to her despite her age. Unlike Mikasa, Annie's character represents freedom. This is obvious when we see her trying to escape the walls in the final episode. When Mikasa tells her to fall, her eyes rest in the sky and her memories drift to the moments with her stepfather who tells her to come back. Her whole character is written based on the theme of freedom. She wants to get rid of the burden thrown to her by the Mali government and be free. She wants to go back to her homeland and see her father. But just like the other characters of the series, her freedom is limited. I believe the reason why her character is so underrated in the series is because of the narrative structure. Isayama couldn't reveal much about the world during the first arc of the story, so the flashbacks of Annie's past were also limited. By the time we get to learn about the pain she had to endure, her character's screen time was limited to just one flashback in the 3rd season. Next up we have Historia. Now the reason why she's such an amazing character is solely because of the character development she's received. Isayama once again showed us how he can masterfully weave character arcs to justify both the characters and the narrative. Historia's character arc starts in the latter half of the second season, where she's separated from Emir and she tells her to lead her own life. Just like Eren was a huge influence on Mikasa, Emir was a massive influence for Historia. She grew up in the Survey Corps depending on Emir, and the latter was also overprotective around Historia. But later, when Emir realizes the pressure put on the shoulders of Reiner and Berthold, she decides to go with them as a hostage and separates from Historia. Historia becomes her own independent character from this point onwards. She makes her own decisions and, rather than depending on others, realizes that she should defend herself. As she says to Eren in the beginning of the third season, she's no longer the good girl called Krista Lenz, but her arc doesn't end there. She soon falls into the influence of her father, who abandoned her a long time ago, and nearly falls into his lies and tries to take the Titan serum. But she recalls Emir's words once again before smashing the vial and deciding to rescue Eren. She abandons her father and decides to make her own decision instead of getting influenced. It's once again emphasized when she asks Erwin to join the fight against the Titan of Rod Reese, and also when she decides to accept her heritage and become the queen. If it isn't obvious by now, the themes of Historia's character are independence and influence, which are another two main themes of Attack on Titan. As always, the Eldians wanted independence from Marley, and if you're a manga reader, you'll surely know about the power of influence in the manga. Talking about the manga, it's time for us to see how all three characters have developed in the current chapters of the manga, so from this point onwards, we'll have manga spoilers. Let's get back to the character of Mikasa. How has her character developed in the current manga chapters? For that, we'll have to revisit chapter 112, because I believe this was the chapter that resulted in a pivotal change in the character of Mikasa. The scene where Eren tells Mikasa that he hated her is also the point where she escapes Eren's influence. Despite her tears, she realizes that depending on Eren for everything's worthless, and she should learn to make her own decisions. This doesn't mean that she's going to lose her affection for Eren, this just means that her thought process revolving around Eren is slowly coming to a halt. She starts to believe that Eren's motivations might indeed be villainous, and decides to join forces with others to stop him. Now, the old Mikasa wouldn't even think to raise her blade against Eren, much less fight him, but Eren managed to remove the bond between him and Mikasa with his callous speech. This is a core turning point for her character, as she finally needs to fight against the very person her existence depended on. Annie, on the other hand, had decided to accept her burden. She still wants to see her father, but is now calmer and more collected compared to her previous breakdown. Unlike Reiner, she readily accepts that she needs to defeat Eren even after breaking free from the crystal years later, and manages to join the side of the Alliance without second thought. Instead of trying to run away and escape, Annie has decided to face her fears and take responsibility for the burden thrown at her. Historia, on the other hand, has appeared much less in the current chapters. We saw her in a couple of flashbacks and finally saw her carrying a child in chapter 107. Now, we don't know whether this was something forced on Historia or something she did willingly, but if she did that willingly, we know that she'll still make her own decisions and isn't influenced by anyone. So, did you get an idea about what we mean by strong female characters? Just because a character cuts her hair short and manages to defend herself against anyone doesn't mean she's a strong female character. Strong female characters have flaws, develop over time, and help to build out a relationship between the narrative's core themes and issues. This is something most anime fail to accomplish, but Isayama is not only brilliant when weaving plot threads, but character arcs as well. We hope he does justice for these amazing characters by giving them justifiable and memorable endings in the manga. That's it for today, anime fans. We hope you learned something from this video. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and also subscribe to our channel if you want to see more analysis and discussions like this. I'll see you next time on ViniiTube.